Everybody, we're getting going live. Get ready to go live. Good evening. I would like to call the August 19th, 2021 Skokie 68 School Board meeting to order. One of these together. Can I get a roll call, please?
Phil Jordan. Espinosa. Here. Joseph.
Here.
Rothner.
Here.
Sturban.
Here.
Sullivan. Here. Warshaw. Here.
Thank you. We will now open our meeting for public comment. Please remember that this is not a dialogue between you and the board. If you have a specific issue which requires a response, Superintendent Garwood or the appropriate person will get back to you. Please state your name and your connection to Skokie School District 68. Please limit your remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Finally, avoid comments specific to a person, student, or staff member, respecting their right to privacy. You may use the podium to speak. I believe we have one signed-up speaker. One signed-up speaker, and we have a couple comments that were submitted digitally. Shall we start with Anna Maria?
Hi. So, my name is Anna Maria Thomas. I have 2 kids in this district, one at Dean Stanton and one at Fort Orchard Junior High. And my comment is about masks. As you can see, I'm against it. And mostly because I have a daughter who has an IEP with selective mutism, and she has a very high anxiety disorder. And she has, on top of it, she has glasses, and it's very hard for her to wear a mask. But for me, this math doesn't make any sense, and I'm gonna try to bring some data why does not make any sense. I know it's an executive order, and you're trying to follow this, as you told me, because I asked some questions, and I did send it to the superintendent, the same questions, and Mr. Joseph Rothner, the same questions, and I was advised that we are respecting the executive order. I would suggest you to request this answer from the governor's office directly. That was the answer to the email. So I just wanna show you some data. Sorry, I'm still nervous for the first time. I have print out from the CDC website from everything that I'm about to talk. And I'm gonna tell you why this math does not make sense to me. I looked at data from the CDC website in 2017, 2018 from the flu, during the flu season, which is 4 months, November to March, 643 kids died under age of 18. In 2018 to 2019 flu season, 477 kids died. In 2019-2020 flu season, 434 kids died. Comparatively, out of the over 3.6 million cases of COVID-19 in children in the US, 423 kids died by August 11, 2021. That is less child death from COVID than each of the last 3 flu seasons. But wait, the 423 reported deaths in children of COVID-19 is over a period of 20 months, from January 2020 all the way to August 11 of 2021. This means the risk of death from COVID-19 per season is even lower than the flu, perhaps half as low. And if you look closely, you will see that the CDC COVID-19, I have over here the printout, death count includes 18 years old, but seasonal flu death count does not. It's age 0 to 17. So why mask wasn't necessary for flu, but now it's a must? Why mask isn't needed when it's flu season, when the data shows that children have higher risk of dying from the flu than COVID? And if you're not concerned about children dying from the flu, you should absolutely not be concerned from children dying from COVID. And if a child passes COVID to an adult under 70, the survival rate is 99.85%. Have you ever wondered about the psychological damage you do to the children by having them wear this mask all day? Teaching them what? The air is toxic? that everybody around you is sick? How about the health effect? Forcing them to breathe to spit, sweat, and dirt-soaked rags, so-called mask every single day. You're happy to place this burden on children, not to keep them safe, because they're safe based on the data. They're absolutely safe. Not to keep the adults safe, because they can all get vaccinated. It's all there if they're feared for their lives. What is it? Is it a security blanket for you? I'm absolutely disgraced by this. Thank you.
Philip, do you read the submitted comment?
All right, we have two submitted comments. The first is from Jeffrey and Natalia Oberek. They're both parents in the school district. All of the current planning for return to in-person schooling is based on decisions made earlier in the year. At that time, the data and transmissibility were based on what was essentially a different virus. The superintendent's message to parents on returning indicates that the decision was made last spring. The May board meeting discussed the expectation of vaccinations for young children beginning before the start of school. The June board meeting hardly discussed COVID planning at all. There was no July board meeting even scheduled during a time that the pandemic situation required a frank discussion about the rapidly changing Delta variant conditions. In addition, much of the messaging being provided discusses positive data from efforts at in-person learning from last year, when the transmissibility and effects on children were from a different strain and overall condition. Finally, zero parental input was solicited at any point for opinions or engagements. All of our messages independent learning option were responded to uncompromising tone. We were left with the understanding that if we didn't like the plans, then we could leave. And any attempts to dialogue or curriculum sharing discussion would not be entertained. It took a FOIA request as to responses. We are formally asking the board to consider an option for parents to have asynchronous independent work managed by parents at home that matches the grade level work as best as possible. In this scenario, we are asking that we be informed of the weekly curriculum goals and have some items to pick up. Family members at risk. Most importantly, it allows our child to maintain some connection to the school and teacher in a way consideration. what is best for the physical safety for our students. Remote learning is not an option for them. I completely understand and support that. I feel there are other options. For example, sharing curriculum outlines with parents to teach their children at home, so all the children can stay on the same page with their educational studies. I love James Sensen and all of the staff there, but if there are no policy changes, I will have no choice but to homeschool until a change is made or my children receive the vaccine. I truly hope you consider my concerns. I am sure I am not the only worried parent in the Skokie School District. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. I look forward to your response.
Thank you. We should move to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Our first agenda item is to review our fall 2021 school opening plan. I shared back in May of 2021 what we were getting in terms of guidance from the Illinois School State Board of Education. At that time, we did not know, and we did not make any promises about what school would be. Simply projected based on what the information we had at that time. And said to our parents that we'll review the situation and the guidance we get through July, and presumably we'll be by the end of July or the beginning of March. Which is about the time we did share the initial plan with our parents. A couple days after I shared the plan, there was a modification to that plan with regard to teachers wearing masks. And a few days later, the governor declared a policy. Coming up as well with additional considerations. In my latest communication to board members, and also this is now an update. We believe that we can open safely if we use all the precautions and everything we've learned over the course of the last year. I know it feels a little bit like deja vu, as like last August, but it feels very different on the other hand, because we know a lot more. If conditions change and we need to go remote or hybrid, we know how to do these things, and we know how to do them well. At this time, all the entities mentioned above have forecast and let us know that they believe it is safe to open with the conditions that we are opening in. We have taken extraordinary precautions from air quality testing to putting over the next several weeks. The air quality testing we're doing does not test for COVID itself. That kind of test does not exist. But we're able to monitor the air to ensure that we do have a high quality of air exchange, which is critical in making sure that the air that we breathe is fresh. And we have several other things that they look for carbon monoxide and others as well. So when we get those results back, we'll be happy to share them with the board and the community. We did this last year as well, and our air intake system was found to be working very well. Jeff and I had a discussion a couple weeks ago, one difference, which is the reason why we want to get that testing done testing is when we did that testing last year, we weren't full capacity. So we didn't have as many breeders in the room and have more, so we'll be doing that air quality testing again. We are not offering remote instruction. We were directed by the state to offer in-person instruction. All children would attend in person unless two conditions were met. I let the community know what those conditions were back in May, and nothing has changed. And basically, students have to be both ineligible to receive a vaccine. At this point, is any student 11 and under. And the other condition is they would have to be under a quarantine order. So if they are ineligible for the vaccine and under a quarantine order, they would not be in school. Apart from that, we've been directed to do their in school. Social distance with kids wearing masks, all the other precautions that we put in place has been reduced to 3 feet. University of Illinois, Champaign, they were one of the first ones to develop high quality rapid PCR test last year. Student population there. They have now begun with that testing. And basically what that all of the vaccinated students have weekly basis. Results back in less than 24 hours at no cost. They even staff to come in and do it. They take the sample. Students potentially in quarantine. Is a superior testing method than the one we were using last. We'll talk more about that when we get to the agenda item, because we need to approve, the shield testing. Let's see, vaccinations. Skokie is fortunate that it has a relatively high rate of vaccination among adults. At the time I originally wrote this, the vaccine eligible population for 12 plus was at 82%. I'm sure it's higher by now. But that rate for students 12 to 17 was somewhere in the mid 60s percent back several weeks ago. Presumably with the high school starting, that rate has probably gone up because that was that 12 to 17 rate. We are still awaiting approval for the vaccine for children back in the spring. I shared that what the information we were getting is that a vaccine could potentially be ready by September. I remember sharing that I hoped that they would get it done earlier, potentially August. And that, my hope is obviously not turned out. And at this point, we haven't heard for sure what that looks like. So sometime in September, the last I've heard is when the vaccine will be approved for children 11 and below. And then my guess is, that rollout might take a month or so to happen. So I am guesstimating, not promising, the student vaccines could be available by October, late October, November. That's my best guess. Okay. Once that happens, we will work with the Skokie Health Department to provide vaccine opportunities for all of our students. Also recently, the subject of the booster vaccine has come up for those people who have been, gotten both of their vaccination shots. Because one of the alarming pieces of the Delta variant is that vaccinated people are susceptible to getting the Delta variant. I will say that from all that I've read and all the information I have, including straight from the health department, is even though you are still susceptible to getting the Delta variant of COVID with a vaccine, the side effects, it's much less significant than the risk of grave effects is much less. I had my own experience with that. My daughter, who is working at Vanderbilt Emergency Room, the hospital down in Nashville, fully vaccinated, she got the Delta variant and had to spend 10 days in quarantine. And, it wasn't nearly as great a situation as it could have been. So there are people who are getting, the Delta variant, which is why we're back to masks where none of us want to be. None of us want to wear a mask. None of us want staff members to have to wear masks. None of us want children to wear masks. It's not something that we derive any joy or pleasure from. It is a safety issue to ensure that our students and staff and their families are as safe as possible. Let's see. Transportation, we'll be running full capacity with transportation for parents who have requested that. Masks will be required. You will not be allowed to be on a bus, get on a bus without a mask, and you will not be able to take it off. You will also not be able to enter our schools or take your mask off while you're at school unless you have the express permission of an administrator. We are continuing with all of our other regular mitigation strategies of disinfection, air exchange, hand washing, sanitizing, etc. We are going to have, we're working to offer after-school clubs. The Park District, Ryan and I met with them several weeks ago to try to get that up and running. They're hopeful they're going to be able to do that, but they have run into their own staffing issues. You've probably known if you go out and about, help wanted signs are just about everywhere, and a lot of industries are really struggling to get employees. Our hiring season for teachers this year took us a little bit longer than usual. Some positions took a couple months to fill. I hear that is not a Skokie 68 issue, that is an education-wide issue. And at this point, now that we've got our teaching positions filled, we are on to filling our teacher assistant positions. I think I shared with you, we were at 22 openings last Friday. I think we are down to 20 or 21? 21, all right, well, we hired one. We are still working on that. Part of it is probably the shortage of people who want to take these positions right now. Part of it is probably also the fact that our principals really focused on those licensed positions first and are just now being able to get to those certified or classified positions. Skokie Park District will offer the SPACE program for before and after school childcare. Again, we're waiting to hear an update from them because their initial numbers were lower than they felt like they could staff. So one of the things they asked us is how we would feel about consolidating two buildings. In order to have enough kids there for them to be able to justify staff when they're short on staff. We told them our preference would be not to consolidate, but obviously, they can only provide what they can provide. They don't have enough personnel. We may need to look at that. Ryan, I haven't heard any update from them yet. You haven't either? Okay. And then our breakfast and lunch food service plan. All students in the district, regardless of whether they are eligible under the free and reduced lunch and breakfast guidelines, will be eligible for free meals again this year. Until further notice. Breakfast will be sent home at the end of the day with kids in a sack to reduce one more opportunity where kids get together and take masks off. Lunch will be done at, with that 6 feet of difference, we had to purchase, a few hundred of small folding tables because we did not have enough individual desks to be able to be in the classrooms and to be in the lunchroom at the same time. So we had to buy several hundred little mini folding tables to be able to create those opportunities. I did forget, while I was talking about positions, we did create some new positions this year at our elementary level, we are looking for 2 lunch and recess supervisors per building that could be parents. We are targeting our parent mentor graduates first for those positions. We think it'd be an excellent opportunity. They're 2.5, 3 hours a day. It would be a great entry level position for some of our trained mentors to get in and start getting some experience. And we need the extra help in supervision simply because our lunch hours are going to be extended, because we can't have as many kids go in the lunch room at the same time. There's going to be smaller groups, so our lunch window is several hours as opposed to 1.5 hours or so. We also imagine that we need those extra hands and bodies for a great deal of other things as well because of all the extra stuff we have to do with COVID. So we're going to pilot those positions this year and see how that works. All I can say with regards to staff and our administrators let me talk about our administrators first and foremost. They have been working hard around the clock all summer, and especially these last several weeks. I heard a tale of one of our administrators working until 3:30 in the morning to be able to get ready for the start of school. They are doing their best to ensure that our students are safe and that staff members are safe, and that we are doing everything in our power, according to the guidance and beyond, to be able to do this successfully. If we start to experience infections and quarantines that start to grow in scale, and or we receive information from the health department or any of the entities that I mentioned before that the conditions are changing, we will quickly switch to whatever platform we need to, whether it's a choice opportunity or whether it becomes a remote opportunity for everybody again. We would not like to have to go back that route. We would like to be successful and not go that direction, but we will not hesitate to make changes as needed when information changes. Really our plan is there's been a lot of talk about the harm that can happen when people get COVID. There's also been an enormous amount of information about the harm that happens when children are remote and stay home. And our plan is an attempt to really balance these factors. We need to be mindful of the social emotional challenges that a lot of children experience while learning at home, where they're not able to socialize and be around other children and their teachers. And at the same time, we also need to balance the health and safety of our kids. And that's what I think our plan does, is that we're getting kids back in school and we're trying to do it under the safest set of circumstances we can. But if something changes, we will not hesitate to make modifications. I was able to tour several of our buildings, some of our teachers who were in the rooms early setting up recently. I was touched by the amount of excitement that they have and the amount of confidence that I was feeling about welcoming kids back. Some of them were just giddy about the idea of getting kids in front of them and having their full class again. And they remembered what it was like to start last year without ever meeting their kids in person. So our teachers are very excited. They've been working very hard as well to prepare with the additional modifications that they need to make in their classrooms to make sure that kids are safe. So I think we're ready, and we are confident that we are doing everything we can. We made even new adjustments even today with some suggestions that came from Brandy, our audience here, one of our union co-presidents. And we will continue to make changes and modifications that are reasonable as we're able to do them. Any questions? Yes.
First off, thank you so much for all of the hard work to you and all the administrators this summer, because I know it's been an insane job that nobody wants. So thank you. So you mentioned that if things get worse, then you'll move back to some other model, either being mandated by the entities or by the district itself. Do you guys have a barometer as to like, okay, if we have to quarantine this many classrooms, we're moving to hybrid, like is there that sort of model put in place? Because I think that could be alleviating to parents who are really nervous to know like, okay, if we meet this threshold, this is what happens.
Yeah. The Skokie Health Department has those thresholds, and I believe last year it was, if you had to quarantine up to like 2 classrooms full of kids, that you needed to, so they would close the school down. So we don't have an exact number of what that looks like yet at this point from them, but we will be working closely with them. Anytime we have a COVID case in our school district, it gets reported to them, and we work with them and get guidance directly from them. I will say that last year, we had a very small number of students or staff show up at school and have COVID. We were not able to trace any of those to actually getting it from exposure. In other words, the measures we put into place kept COVID from spreading amongst our students and staff at school. These were situations that came from home. The inconvenient part was it did cause some quarantining until we were able to verify things. So again, I think our plan's pretty safe. And we'll be looking at what they tell us that where we need to go. So I don't have an exact number. I mean, this is a number where we would shift things because it's, we tried to look at numbers last year and kind of set some thresholds. And really over time that changed because of all the mitigation efforts we were able to bring to bear. The guidance shifted that we were getting that led us to those thresholds. And basically they felt like those thresholds were no longer really appropriate and adequate to have a strict cutoff on the numbers. So there's a variety of factors that go into shifting one way or the other. And we will monitor and keep you guys all informed and keep our parents informed as we approach a situation where that might be a potential. I like to be able to give people some heads up. That's something that I take great care of, forecasting what might be coming down the pike. So if we sense that things are heading in that direction, I will try to let parents and everyone know weeks ahead of time so that people have some time to start shifting what they might need to do in order to accommodate kids being home again.
I have a very similar line of questions and so for those thresholds, if I remember from last year, were like 8% and 4%, that if we got above, if it was above 4%, most of the students would be home. If it was above 8%, all students, including the students, were eligible to go in person.
You're talking about the positivity rate.
Yes, so I was just curious about, regardless of what was going on, would there still be contingencies for students that were that had high needs, like the ELL students and the special ed students, to be able to be in person, provided that the positivity rate wasn't going astronomical? Which
yes, as I referenced earlier, we were able to try out, not by choice, but we were able to try out several different varieties of what school could look like last year, from 100% remote to some populations being offered in person again, to anybody who wanted to come back was back. So all those are in our arsenal, and depending on the circumstances. So I'd say yes, it's possible we could go to a situation where some students are able to be in person while other students are not. That's possible. One thing that I've learned is I always thought I was pretty good at being able to predict the future. I don't feel that way quite as much anymore. So I can't really tell you what we would move to. It's all going to be dependent on the circumstances at the time. So our plan didn't really use the positivity rate as an indicator that was out there. We looked at what came out of the Harvard Institute for Global Studies, and our thresholds were at that time were based upon the case count per 100,000 in Cook County. So we initially had that with the different thresholds, and then later on the Harvard Global Institute came out with sort of new thresholds and really kind of recommended against a rigid threshold system and advised us to take other things into account beyond just, sort of that larger, this a larger number. What kind of mitigation efforts, what's your local experience? So, and when they say that, they mean things could be not really good locally, but if we're not having situations occur and we're able to do it safely, why close is sort of the message that they gave us at the time. So we tried to become a little bit more flexible with those kinds of things if we felt like our local experience was better than what the data for the larger area of Cook County would show us. I will say that our plan, all the schools in the township are doing a almost identical plan, as are almost every school district in the Cook County area. There's not a whole lot of diversions from what people are doing. Everybody's following the same guidance and the same mandates and trying to make sure that things are as safe as possible.
Jim?
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, one of the conversations we had, I just wanted to both ask a couple questions and focus a little bit more on the air quality testing. Because everything that I've read over the last several months, there's next to nothing we can control about COVID itself. But there's a lot that we can do to control the spaces that our students and staff are in. You mentioned that for the first several weeks, I think is what you said, that there's gonna be testing in the schools.
Our first round is starting tomorrow and will be going on for several weeks. So there'll be other testing going on throughout.
Okay, just because I know as the school year continues and it's harder to open windows and things like that, just those little seasonal changes will have a big impact on, what teachers can do to help the air circulation. And the testing, I really hope can be, almost room to room in the schools, where we're not just getting, one place in a building to get a sense of the air quality.
It's a multi-site testing, so there's sample areas that'll be done through, throughout the.
And then I know you'd said that information could be shared. I'm excited to see how it looks, and then eager to see, if we start getting results that are alarming, what steps we can take to try to mitigate that quickly.
Right.
Because we're already talking about what if we have outbreaks to a certain level in the school, and the recommendations from Skokie and the health department, whatever we can do to avoid reaching that point.
Absolutely.
I mean, from our conversations, I'm not suggesting I'm speaking to someone that doesn't agree. I just want to make sure that it's something that we're very aggressive at the beginning of the year, identifying those issues and acting.
So here's what we're able to test for at this point: temperature, relative humidity, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and then they'll do visual inspections of the mold. So
Carbon dioxide is the biggest indicator.
yeah, that helps us know if the air is fresh or if it's, if there's too much breathed air kind of lingering around. So I do know you had mentioned, it gets harder to, have windows open as the year progresses. I do know teachers who, in the wintertime, had those, had their windows open and had kids, bring additional, layers of clothes. And
I heard some stories about that. I did not complain.
So
Some kids, and I mean, that'll be up to the individual teachers, of course.
yeah, maybe. I mean, it may be something that's more mandated for people to ensure, if we can't make sure that the air is clean enough, that, there may be, it may not be up to individuals to, to open the windows up more. Buses. The windows on the buses will be open as well. So, by the end of October, our kids are probably going to be bundling up a little bit more to keep a little bit warmer while they're riding the buses, because we'll keep those buses windows cracked even in the winter time too. Now, we're not able to open them like that. They're only able to open like 2 inches. There's a line there by law. You're not able to open the bus windows any further than that. But yes, the air quality is something we are going to be hyper aware and conscious of. Fortunately, we have an air control system. I think Ryan just used it a few minutes ago. Software where you can get on and you can change the controls room by room, area by area here in this building, in our schools, and our maintenance staff is always very excited to show us how they do that, because they can zero on the map and get data about what that looks like as well. So
Excellent. Thanks, Jim.
yeah, thanks for the question.
I have one more question.
Yep.
So I know that the parents who are concerned and want to do a hybrid or keep their kids home are not necessarily the majority right now. But I also don't want to lose kids from our district, because our district's really wonderful, and I want to make sure kids are participating and do feel included. Would it be, and I know you all have thought about like every scenario, but is it up for discussion for those individual parents to perhaps say, I want to work with this teacher to figure out a one-on-one situation, not to add any more work to the teacher, because making additional plans for someone is a lot. But if, you know, the models they suggested, like, is that something that people could entertain as a discussion, or are we, for now, saying let's table it?
I would say for right now, that is not a plan. Our teachers work extraordinarily hard,
Yes.
and for them to be able to do those things and meet individually with students or parents, you know, it would have to be beyond the school day. They have contractual hours that they work. That's not a real feasible plan at this point for them to do double duty, essentially is what that would amount to. We're doing everything we can to encourage parents to come in person, ensuring that everything is safe. We know that we can't please all parents on, you know, any of the sides of the debate that's, you know, raging around COVID right now. We do know what our capacity limits are for our teachers to be able to do those types of things. So there are homeschooling networks. If parents do make a choice, we have not encouraged any parent to make that choice, and we have not, you know, callously told parents, if you don't like our plan, then you can go homeschool. That has not been said by anyone.
Of course not, yeah.
It's just been said that, you know, that is an option that some parents have told us that they are pursuing. There is a website on the ISB, you know, the ISB website. They have a homeschooling page that has resources and other information. I think there's local and state networks for that. We have agreed, if there's parents who don't want to send their kids, that we would share the math workbook and the
Couple of our consumable materials that are easily accessible, we're able to share those. And all of our learner statements are on the district website, so.
parents can go and you can sort of see what the learning statements, you know, the goals and objectives are for, you know, by grade level.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I know this puts people in a difficult situation, and I know, you know, no matter what our plan is, it's not going to be what everybody wants, and, you know, I wish I could somehow create the plan that was what everybody wanted. We do have limits as to what we can do legally, compliance-wise, and just even logistically. But you know, we are going to try to make the best experience for our kids that we possibly can, and hope that this Delta variant is more of a minor speed bump than the large surge we had last year.
Thank you.
Well-
Michelle, oh,
Yep.
do you have another item? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, we've got more items.
Go.
Yeah.
No, more superintendent's reports? Or
Oh,
is
yes,
that-
we got more superintendent reports, yes.
No.
So, keeping on the topic of COVID, our next agenda item is the ESSER 3.
Yes.
You know, we received, like all school districts, received quite a bit of money to help us with the extra expenses that we're having to incur because of COVID. And one of the requirements of receiving that money is that we need to share the return to learn continuity plan and the description of use of funds. So I will now turn it over
All
to
right.
Dr. Sam Jedney, who will give you an overview of that.
So about half of this presentation has been covered in depth by Dr. Garwood in his superintendent report, so I will gloss over some of those pieces so that you don't hear them a second time. So we are receiving funds from the American Rescue Plan through the ESSER 3 grant. We have received, this will be our third ESSER grant. It is by far the largest. The law was signed into place last March, and the grants have opened up to districts as of July 1. And part of the requirements, as Dr. Garwood mentioned, is that we have to develop a return to learn continuity plan, which is pretty similar to what we developed and issued last year. We've just really kind of taken some of those components and updated it for this school year and some of the differences between last year and this year. We also have to identify a use of funds plan and have that plan available to all stakeholders, publicly posted on our website and available for stakeholder input for a period of 30 days. So proof of the plan, proof of the use of fund plan, and the stakeholder input is part of the grant application. So that's really what this presentation is about, just kind of showing you what is going to be publicly presented and then also submitted to ISB.
Just so, for your awareness, our two monitors on the
Yes,
left and
sorry.
right here have a
Oh, I
temporary
see. Okay.
failure, so
Yes.
we do have that one monitor over there works,
I've got
and
it
you
in
also
front of
have
me
it
here.
on your iPad as well.
Sorry, I
So
forgot
our
to mention
apologies
that.
for the two monitors. We had an electricity issue here a few days ago.
So those of you lucky enough to sit over there can see it here, and those of you on this side will need to look at your iPad. So these are the major components of the plan and of the presentation that's available. This is just a quick introduction to explain kind of the history of how all this began last year in 2020, 2021. The original Return to Learn plan is linked there for people to be able to access who want to see what last year looked like. We did include stakeholder input as part of the development of that plan. Dr. Garwood led that committee who worked with him and the Skokie Health Department to put together our all of our different phases that we would go through last school year. So as he mentioned, we are returning to a full in-person learning this school year. We have developed that plan through guidance with all of the different agencies that Dr. Garwood mentioned. And this continuity plan is intended to be a living document. So as things change and shift, the plan would also be updated for parents and stakeholders to see.
And the same would be true for the use of funds report, because we haven't expended all the ESSER funds yet. So if new expenditures would occur, we would also post them there.
So there are a few major categories in the rollout of the new school year, but also tied to the use of funds. So the first is safety measures and protocols. And again, following all of the guidance from the IDPH, ISB, CDC, all of our health and safety initiatives include all of our social distancing pieces that are in place. So the 3 feet minimum distance in the classroom to the extent possible, the 6 feet in the lunchroom, signage around the building, around physical, social distancing, all of those pieces are still in place. We also have several virus mitigation things that are taking place. So masking of all students and staff, regardless of vaccination status, sanitation around the building. We have purchased supplies and equipment to sanitize and clean facilities, and we'll obviously continue to do that. The use of our EPA registered disinfectant for all of the high touch areas around the school, that will be more important than ever as more kids are in the building. So all of those pieces are really still, most of them are just continuing from last year with a few tweaks to some of them based on a fully in-person situation this year. So some additional measures and protocols, our contact tracing will occur for our unvaccinated individuals. We also have the COVID testing opportunity that was spoken about earlier. And one of the changes that's going to take place this year is that students and staff will no longer self-certify. That was found to not be effective and was really, schools were encouraged to just discontinue that use. Rather, our health clerks will continue to monitor students using an abbreviated list of symptoms that has been put out by the IDPH. So you can see those lovely symptoms there on the screen. That is a shorter list than was used previously.
And the big caveat there is newly developed symptoms. It's, if you have allergies and, and have those kinds of things routinely, as I do, it's a new onset of symptoms that are different than what you normally might experience.
So instructional supports is obviously another area that we want to focus on with return to learning. So we will continue to provide high quality instruction through the use of our priority standards that have been issued from ISB. We will provide asynchronous instruction for those students that are in quarantine. We will really rely on our academic testing this fall to kind of learn where our students are and where we need to, how we need to move them forward. I think for the first time ever, we have a real information gap around our students' strengths and areas for opportunities for growth. And so that's going to be a focus this fall, is really getting to know our kids and all of the things, strengths that they're coming in with and how to accelerate them forward. We are not focusing on remediation of students. We are not trying to go back and teach every single thing that they missed. We're focusing on taking them from where they are with grade level standards and moving them forward. Otherwise, we will never catch them up. We have increased the elementary school day by 120 minutes weekly, as you know, and voted on a few months ago. So that will definitely be an advantage for our elementary kiddos. We have purchased a lot of educational technology and digital learning resources to support remote learning, but many of those resources and materials are continue to be used this year because they have been found to be fabulous resources and supplementary materials for our teachers and our students. So we'll continue to use some of those pieces. We'll also provide, as usual, our in-school reading and math interventions for students that are in need of that support beyond the core curriculum. So those are our instructional supports. Some more. We, as you know, have created 5 MTSS differentiation specialists to work in the schools over the next 3 years as part of the ESSER funding. They will be available to teachers, supporting and helping teachers build capacity for differentiating instruction in the classroom, and again, really meeting the kids where they are, moving them forward. We did offer summer school programming for our kinder, first, and 6th grade students. We had about 90 students who participated in that. We also offered summer band programming to kind of keep the music alive and moving for a lot of our band students. We are working on after-school clubs and activities, trying to get that situated for our students. Our staff participated in a lot of summer and school year professional development to support all students. And we also are supporting the Early Childhood Alliance for that preschool component of the grant as well. So another area that is a big focus for schools and for us is social emotional supports. We know that the pandemic has been hard on everyone, and especially hard on many of our students. So we will be looking at making sure that our ruler curriculum, which is evidence-based, is used consistently and with integrity, providing social emotional support to students who need it through the assistance of our social workers. We do have a social emotional screener, which will be helpful in identifying students who might have a specific need or need to get on the radar of a social worker for some time and attention. And then additional professional development and just really making sure that our teachers know how to best support their kids with SEL in the classroom. So another major area is capital improvements, and this is kind of categorized in 2 different ways. So things that we're doing specifically with buildings and grounds, and things that we're doing in the learning environment. So building and grounds includes those ionization devices that we have installed. It includes the area handling unit schedules, the generators that will support continuity of power, internet, and then also our lovely video and audio equipment for live streaming our board meetings so that our stakeholders can be involved from the comfort of their home. And then in terms of the learning environment, our classroom technology resources like our ViewSonic boards have assisted in delivery of instruction, but it is considered a capital improvement because it is a structure that is
Attached to the wall.
Thank you, attached to the wall. I said, Ryan, you might need to chime in on the capital improvement slide. Thank you for that contribution. And then enhancing our digital and online security, which is critical, especially with so much remote learning going on. We want to make sure that our students are safe and our teachers are safe in that regard. So those are kind of the big categories that all of our work is centering around in terms of providing continuity of learning. And then with that comes, okay, so which of these pieces is going to be funded through ESSER 3? And again, ESSER 3 funds is awarded to us to use to develop a plan for, as it says, the safe return of in-person learning and continuity of services for the purpose of promoting transparency and accountability for funds usage. We are able to use these funds all the way back to March 2020 and then all the way forward to September 2024. So it is a fun exercise in accounting for Ryan and myself. And especially over 3 different ESSER grants, which are not really identified as such. They're just ESSER. So it makes it fun. So in terms of how we are proposing to use these funds, we are looking at, we've broken down the specific areas that we're focusing on, which are our instructional supports and capital improvements. And then we've identified how much of the ESSER funds are being used within each of the 3 years between now, next year, and 2024. So you can see that we've identified the salary and benefits for our 5 differentiation MTSS specialists, our summer programming cost, professional development supporting our English learners. One of the pieces of the grant is specifically to identify how you're focusing on at-risk groups of students. And so professional development for teachers of English learners is one of the pieces that we're focusing on with a consultant from the IRC. We also are looking at helping our libraries kind of recoup some of the book loss that they have had, not only just in a regular school year, but over the last year and a half, with many books that never returned, book bags that were sent home to have kids have availability and again, not returned. So kind of looking to help them build up their circulation again through some of that funding. We're going to be working with the Illinois MTSS network to kind of re-examine our MTSS process and framework. And so the funds we're proposing would help cover the cost of those consultants and coaches. And then, as I said earlier, some support for the Early Childhood Alliance. And then capital improvements, our refresh of our staff laptops, our student iPads, the boardroom equipment, and then also a portion of our portion for the capital project at Malloy, which we are obligated to contribute. So all of that totals up to our $3,348,000 and a little bit of additional change for our ESSER 3 grant. So stakeholders will have the opportunity for input for the next 30 days. This will be posted on the website. There is a link to a Google survey, which just asks, do you have input that you'd like to provide? It's just open response. And then there's also a QR code for folks who want to just scan it and complete it on an iPad or a smartphone. And that is the continuity plan and the use of funds. Any questions for me or Ryan? You're welcome.
Thank you. Submit your survey at the link.
Yes, feel free. Input.
I have one more superintendent.
You do, I know. I was gonna say this.
This one is probably not nearly as captivating as our earlier topics. It's much lighter. I submitted to board members a draft of our scheduled board reports. And basically what that is, it's a month-by-month preview of the topics we know we will be addressing at those particular months. You know, and most of these are the routine kinds of things that, you know, have a month every year where they occur. There are some additional things here. I have returned to learn update every month for the foreseeable future.
Oh, you optimistically left it off in February, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was hoping by then, you know,
You
that
can see
things
into the
might
future.
change. The one thing I'll say about this is, this does change. New things come on here as new topics get identified by us, by, you know, outside of the school district sometimes, or by board members, or the board as a whole. Sometimes new topics come on. Sometimes they do shift months depending on you know, the rhythm and flow of things. So this is not the comprehensive list of everything we'll be talking about this year. For the most part, it's the more routine kinds of things, or in some cases, you know, for example, if we have a learning team this year, we'll try to project out when we think that final report out might be. Chances are it might change, but at least you know that those things are out there. And know that, you know, the board ultimately has input into the agenda. So as we move forward, if there's additional topics, you know, we'll probably discuss them here, put them on agenda for fuller review as we go forward.
I do hope that there is no FOIA also in February. This is a very optimistic month. No FOIA and no return to London.
Not gonna miss that meeting.
That'd be nice to have 1 month.
No, so FOIA's on there every month if needed. Some months we get FOIAs, other months we don't. But
They're real easy for us. They're not as easy for Phil.
all right, that's the schedule of board reports. It's just to give you a little bit of a heads up of when things might be occurring. Every month you'll get the new board agenda as it's being developed, and you'll know what's going to be discussed. And hopefully there won't be late additions like we had to add this month in the last couple of days with some new information we got. All right.
Alright. And we shall move on to the reading and acceptance of minutes. I call for a motion to approve the minutes from the June 17th, 2021 Board of Education regular meeting.
Second?
What does those?
Alrighty, let's see, Espinoza,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Rothner,
Yes.
Sturban,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Warshaw. Yes.
Thank you. We shall move on to the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is our next item of business. Does any member wish to remove any item for separate consideration? I call for a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the personnel report authorizing the change of status and leave of absence for administrators, the hire, resignation, change of status, and leave of absence for licensed staff, the hire, resignation, change of status, leave of absence, and termination for classified staff, financial reports, and pay orders and expenditures.
So moved.
Second.
Joseph,
Yes.
Rothner,
Yes.
Sturban,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Warshaw,
Yes.
Espinoza.
Yes.
Thank you. We now move on to our reports and discussion items, starting with the NTDSE 807 report.
Yeah, so it was a fairly short meeting, mostly centering around summarizing a successful summer school program this past summer, and really just kind of a little bit talking about their return to learn plan. Pretty similar. They're partnering with District 73 to do their shield testing. Just talking about how 95% of their staff has been vaccinated. Really only need to staff about eight paraprofessionals, so for them, a little bit better than here. And then really just kind of the big thing was construction, scheduled to begin October 4th. So the first phase of construction for this year is the new addition. So that will ultimately house the new administrative office and their brand new gymnasium. So that is what will be built starting in October. So that's very exciting. So I know it's been something that's been talked about for a very long time. So it's kind of exciting to be able to see it actually begin. I know this morning they, in their teacher institute day, they had a live big outdoor art mural project that all staff members participated in that they will use then in the new building. So that's kind of a very neat thing to be able to add to it. So that was about it for NCDSC.
Thank you very much. Move on to our Board of Education policy first reading.
Okay, so we have one policy up this time around. It's Board Policy 2.10, School District Governance. And they have struck the line where, so the full sentence was, official action by the board may only occur at a duly called and legally conducted meeting at which a quorum is physically present. They've struck the at which a quorum is physically present, and they've added, except as otherwise provided by the Open Meetings Act, a quorum must be physically present at the meeting. This was in response to the new rules that the governor made this year with regards to being able to hold a meeting without a quorum and to have fully remote meetings without a live audience. So basically, they sort of enshrined the ability to make those changes should something else occur in the future. Just to give us more flexibility in the future without having to wait for the legislative. Questions? Anyone? It will come back at the September board meeting for the second reading and approval. While I'm mentioning the September board meeting, I do want to point out that we're not following our typical pattern of third Thursdays for the September meeting because the third Thursday falls on Yom Kippur, I believe. So our September board meeting will be a week later than normal on September 23rd.
Check my calendar right now. Sure, got it. Thanks. Okay. We now move on to a discussion of the employee vaccination requirement.
So you've probably seen in the news, some school districts are starting to move towards requiring the vaccination for school district employees. In a couple cases, whole states are doing that. In recent weeks, city of Chicago has done that for the entire school district. Stevenson High School also just announced that they are going to implement the vaccine requirement for all staff members. I think it's time for us to consider doing the same to protect each other and to protect our students. This is on for a discussion item today. You have a resolution that's been provided to us by our attorney as part of the board packet. It only got included in your board packet earlier today, so that's when we were able to get it from our attorney. So my apologies if you haven't had an opportunity to review it. It's relatively short. And basically, it says that if approved by you in September, on September 23rd, that employees must be vaccinated in order to come to work and be paid to work. Here in District 68, the vast majority of our staff members have already been vaccinated. I don't have the exact number right now because tomorrow's the deadline for them to let us know. We're clearly in the 90-something percentile of staff members that have been vaccinated, and my guess is it's going to be a very small handful that aren't at this time. The resolution does provide for requesting a religious or medical exemption. There's a relatively high bar for those things, but it is not impossible to entertain that somebody might be granted a religious or medical exemption. If that is the case, the required alternative is regular PCR testing to monitor that they do not have COVID. We'll be able to do that easily in-house because of our Shield testing system that can be used for anybody who's unvaccinated. That's pretty much the resolution in a nutshell. So I guess I need to hear from all of you how you're feeling about that, or any questions you might have about that, and then we'll take action one way or the other at that September board meeting. One thing I would like to do is to get a feel for how you are all feeling about that tonight. Because if I get what feels like a strong consensus around that, I want to be able to message that out to staff members that that is likely coming at that September 23rd board meeting so that people have as much time as possible to get prepared. I will say going to get a vaccine at this point is as easy as walking to the Jewel across the street without an appointment. So, there's not much of a challenge to go out and get one. But if people need to wrap their minds around whatever obstacles, visit their doctors or their faith leaders to discuss that, they would have some time to do that.
So with that, my only question would be is now that it sounds very likely that the boosters are coming, how are we defining that you are fully vaccinated? Are we saying, so if we vote on it in September, are we saying you have to have the 2? Because obviously the booster's just coming. So is 2 out of 3 considered fully vaccinated? The booster's really just obviously is the extra protection, or are we saying at a certain time you should have the 3rd as well?
That is an excellent question. And without the benefit of having a lot of time to think about this, because this is all relatively new.
Yeah.
I will say that the information I got today from the Skokie Health Department, because I reached out to them today to find out, will you guys provide the booster to our staff as you did the first 2 shots? And they got back to me quickly and said, yes, they would. There's a couple of caveats to that, in that you are supposed to have 8 months are supposed to have passed since you become fully vaccinated in order to be eligible for the booster. So, depending on when people got their shot, the timeline of when they'd be eligible for that booster is different.
Yeah.
I would like to see everybody who's eligible, for the booster, get the booster. But people who are getting vaccinated for the first time now, they wouldn't need to, because they would be at that best protection point, a few days after that second vaccination anyway. And we'll see where we are, 8 months down the road.
So then percentage-wise, if we were to report out after the fact, then you could technically say at that point that our staff is 100% vaccinated, even though a few of them would be at the point of like waiting for a booster.
Right,
Whenever.
correct.
Okay.
Now, given our timeline on when I would say the vast majority of our staff got vaccinated, I think the first one was late January, second one was late February. So 8 months after late February, most of our staff wouldn't be eligible for the booster until October.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 8 months after the second shot, if you have 2.
Now, there are also conditions. If you go to the Skokie Health Department, you can see there are certain exemptions to that will allow you to get the booster prior to 8 months, medical conditions that they would do that earlier. So.
Jeff?
Yes.
I don't know if it was intentional, but the way it's currently drafted, we would adopt this on the 23rd, and the deadline to seek an exemption would be the next day.
Correct.
And so I wanted to make sure that was a conscious choice and that would have been communicated well in advance to staff.
It was a conscious choice, which is why I'm looking for sort of a consensus tonight, because if I get that consensus tonight that, you guys are all in support of it, I'll communicate that it's, going to be, there'll be the formal vote then, but the dates of everything will be communicated there as well. The day after, they just need to let us know about the religious or medical exemption by the day after the board meeting. They'll know they have to do that, weeks prior to that. And all they have to do is let us know that they're applying for that exemption or one of those exemptions at that time.
Okay, because again, just as it reads for number 2, employees requesting a religious or medical exemption must submit documentation. Does that mean not at the time they make the request, just eventually they need to provide documentation?
At the time they make the request, we would ask them to do that.
So then staff will need to know that on September 24th, if it's a medical exemption, they need to, by September 24th.
Yeah.
Will there be any mechanism for staff to do that before the 23rd?
Oh, yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to work out the logistics.
And the
of
forms
them
for those, we're going to be
submitting
getting through our
for an
attorneys.
exemption
We haven't gotten them yet, but yes.
For
the
a
idea would
policy
be-
that isn't in effect yet.
Mhm.
Okay.
I just wanted to add, a lot of hospital systems require that all of their employees get a yearly flu shot, right? And so if they don't get that flu shot that year, then they have certain requirements about how they have to interact in the health facilities. They have to be masked all the time while they're at work, regardless of whether they have flu, these kinds of things that hospitals have done. So in relationship to the boosters, since we know that's coming, it seems like we might be able to actually add something in here, and maybe you talked to the lawyer about it, but something about, plus completion of boosters annually or based on guidance from the CDC on booster eligibility, but that these are gonna be things that we may just need one booster, we may need a booster every year, but either way, similarly to a flu shot, the more people that are around with a flu shot, the less likely they are to get a serious issue with flu, and, a lot of people won't get flu. So there's
I
less
think that's
flu
a
for
good
kids.
point to make sure it's inclusive of future.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there
catching
might
us up
be
to where
some
we're at.
language in there that you might be able to put in, because it will be a moving target, right? Like within 8 months to a year of your shot as eligible, something along those lines.
I think that's a good point. We've got an appointment scheduled again with our attorney in the coming 24 hours or so. But yeah, I think clearing that up, what you guys have both brought up, is a very good idea. Other thoughts and questions?
I'm in full support, and I think Jenny brought up a really, really good point, and Noel, I was thinking the same thing, like, let's codify that so we don't have to backtrack, and make sure everybody is on the same page.
Yep, it'll require some tracking, since everybody, people will be on a different schedule, but it's something we can manage, and it's, keeping kids and staff safe is worth the time.
Yeah, there are apps that I use in our workplace where you can upload your vaccination proof and you can do all kinds of tracking that way. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm also in full support. I think it's-
Yeah, we're collecting, copies of cards now, so we'll be able to, form a database of dates and deadlines.
Any other thoughts?
Am I reading the room correctly that there's a strong consensus to bring this back for an action item at September with likely approval with a modification? Okay. Just-
Vaccination.
I will, communicate that this is, coming down the pike tomorrow so that people have time to, make whatever preparations. Again, we're talking about a pretty small number of people who have not been vaccinated up to this point. On to action items.
Here we go. All right, we move on to action items. First up, resolution of the Board of Education ratifying the partial abatement and permanent transfer of monies from the working cash fund to the operations and maintenance fund. I call for a motion to approve the resolution of the Board of Education ratifying the partial abatement and permanent transfer of $3,500,000 from the working cash fund to the operations and maintenance fund.
Second.
Thank you.
This resolution, as well as the following resolution, is a result of a deficit within the funds and just kind of permanently transferring those funds to make sure that at the beginning of the year and at the end of the current fiscal year, we've got enough monies in the funds in order to fully stay in the black, basically, at the end of the year and not have a negative balance.
Any questions?
Okay then. Bruckner,
Yes.
Sturbeck,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Warshaw,
Yeah.
Espinosa,
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Pause to fix the table. All right, we move on to a resolution of the Board of Education ratifying the partial abatement and permanent transfer of monies from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund. I call for a motion to approve the resolution of the Board of Education ratifying the partial abatement and permanent transfer of $4,500,000 from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund.
Second.
Just a continuation.
Here we go. Fumbling that money along.
Same. All right, Sturbins,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Warshaw,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Ruffner.
Yes.
Thank you.
And lastly, we move to an approval of Shields testing agreements and program. I call for a motion to approve the COVID-19 testing support agreement between Skokie School District 68 and Board of Trustees of the University of Illinois, whereas the University of Illinois trustees will provide coordination, logistics, order facilitation, billing, setup help, results reporting, and customer support for COVID-19 testing using the university's rapid RT-PCR testing methodology, for whom the district requires testing services to be performed as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so what you have is a lengthy 10-page agreement. It's been reviewed by our attorney. When we spoke with him, it's the same agreement that every school district in Illinois is getting who is partaking of the Shield testing. It's a pretty standard document. Basically, I believe I am the signature at the end, but our attorney suggested that it's probably a good idea to have the board approve that as well. And basically, we've seen a little video of what this looks like. They've got a very streamlined system. They come in with all the test kits, and they can either set it up so there's a location in the building where kids come to. Kids come, with a barcode that identifies who they are. It gets matched with the sample. They go into a separate area. They spit into the tube until they get up to the fill line.
They're gonna have so much fun.
Yeah.
Top it, bring it back, and basically it just takes a couple minutes to get kids, through that. The other option they shared was, the testing on a cart. So you pull up with the cart outside of a classroom so that kids don't have to, leave their classroom and walk such a large distance, and you can just kind of have kids come out a couple at a time and finish the classroom within, 5 or 10 minutes or so and move on. They provide the human power to get this done. They provide the test kits. They take the test samples afterward and deliver them. Then we get the results back and they say less than 24 hours. They did offer another option. If we didn't want them to provide the personnel, we are able to do that. We would get paid, was it $8 or $10 per test if we did it ourselves? Which would sound great in other times, but we don't have the human power to be able to do that right now ourselves, and are very grateful that they will be able to provide people to come in and do this and get us the results that quickly. So,
I know you're underestimating the joy of handling tubes of saliva.
yeah, they had some instructional videos to kind of show us how it works, and they have a very good streamlined system for how to do it, and it's going to help keep everybody safer and and reduce the amount of time that people might have to quarantine.
Indeed, yeah, that's a big perk.
And this is not a mandated test. Parents will have the opportunity to opt out. So we'll inform parents that we're going to be doing this testing on anybody who's not vaccinated. If a parent objects to that, they'll be able to send us a form that they do not want their child tested.
And just a point of clarification, this is for unvaccinated students
And
and staff,
Mhm.
but vaccinated if there seems to be
symptoms, yes,
symptoms or were in contact and
correct.
needed to do that test in the 3 to 5 days
Yeah.
after. Okay.
Now, at this time, we'll be scheduled 1 day a week where they'll come and do a sweep of each building. And they've said, they could potentially do it up to 2 times a week if the conditions warrant. So if things start to get a little bit more challenging with the incidence of people getting COVID, they've said they could go up to 2 days a week to do it. So we'll have an established day. Ryan, do you know, is it an established day for the whole district, or are they doing buildings on different days? Do we know that yet?
I just had a call with them this afternoon, and they're gonna come out, hopefully early next week and kind of look at each site. It seems like they're gonna be at multiple sites, different days of the week, but kind of potentially rotate. So they might be at one site in the morning and another site in the afternoon, and depending on timing, they might be able to, say get, K1 and 2 done at Devonshire in the morning and some, 3, 4, 5 Island in the afternoon. So they might be at each site twice a week, but doing different grade levels. We haven't been able to really lock down the logistics of the days just quite yet.
And they indicated they would be able to start, you had a date sometime in mid-September.
Yes, they, as of Monday, indicated that they'd be able to start September 8th, which is the Wednesday after Labor Day. Hopefully that's our goal right now. But at least by the middle of September is really what we're looking at.
And the very powerful thing behind all this is if somebody has been exposed by contact tracing and they take a test and come back negative, they don't have to quarantine. Because this is one of the most effective, results or tests that's been developed to be able to determine that. So this should be able to keep more of our kids in school if we can work out, timing of when things occur and when we're able to provide the test.
And if they're signed up to test normally, it's called, get to stay or something, test to stay.
Yes.
So they can test on day 1, 3, 5, and 7, considered when they were a close contact, and not have to quarantine and actually stay in school if they test negative those days. So,
Yes.
Just as an informational piece, I was just gonna make sure, just from the equity lens, making sure that like for that opt-out form, that we give parents plenty of notice, and from looking at the makeup of our group, just making sure that like if it's offered in a different language, just making sure they reach out, because one thing we know, even just from these YouTube videos that we're posting them, like we know a good population of our families don't necessarily watch this. So when they go for the opt-out, we just want to make sure they have as much information as possible. So just as an FYI, I just want to make sure that that's covered, because even up by you, Jim, like in Schaumburg, there was issues in 15 and 54 that the information wasn't given soon enough from when they were going to start doing that testing. So
we don't want to test any parent with, without, or test any child without their parents' knowledge.
Right. And there was a weird, like, it was like a really small window of time, I had heard from 15 and 54 that, where for the deadline of when the board announced it to when the opt-out was due. So I just want to make sure we're giving them as much time as possible.
We should be able to have a couple weeks.
Okay.
After we approve this evening, we should be able to give people a couple weeks, and we can figure out a way to sort of put those forms in our translator.
Yeah, that's
so
exactly what I
that,
said, 'cause I know when I see those ELL emails, I love the fact that you can, right away, you can translate for our family, so if we can make that as also part of that, that would be good for everybody, so there's no barrier here.
And then we'll make sure we, have some follow-up in home language if possible. With parents that might not do it, to make sure they're understanding what they're opting out of.
Just wanting to make sure I understood. So if a child is in close contact for over 15 minutes with someone else who tests positive, we are going to be testing them intermittently, and during that time, do they still have to quarantine?
Not if they pass.
Not if they pass the test. So for instance, on day 1, you don't get are you doing antigen tests or PCR tests at that point?
it's the PCR test.
So that's a 24-hour turnaround, right?
Yes.
So they still would have to quarantine.
There could be a short quarantine until the next time around we have a building that's tested.
Okay.
And one of the things that I foresee us potentially doing, if testing is going on in different days in different buildings, we could, get a child moved to take that test at that next building to reduce the amount of time.
I'm just thinking, for instance, if a child's, just thinking logistically here, if a child is, comes around as having tested positive after they've been a full day at school, and contact tracing identifies 2 or 3 other children that are going to be needing testing, it still takes a bit of time from the time a person gets an exposure to when they test positive. So I'm wondering if like day 1 testing makes any sense, and if it might be better to wait till day 3 because of day 1.
Yeah, and day 1 testing is in a lot of cases, probably not going to be possible, simply because we can't really dictate,
Okay.
oh, we need testing on Monday here
No,
because
no,
of
that was
the
fine, I just, I thought you
situation.
said day 1, day 3, day 5, day 7, kind of
So-
thing, so I was trying to understand how that.
So in their days, is explained to me kind of, are a little different. So when you think of a number line, right, you think of 0's kind of the middle and then 1 is this way. And they say, you know, like you said, usually you aren't symptomatic or potentially test positive. Well, with this test, they expect you to test positive between day -3 and -2. I'm trying to do this backwards so you can, so really, by the time they get that test back, you're about at day 0, hopefully day 1, when you actually, your day
When you're in
-1.
If
So
0 is
then-
a day you're infectious, is that what you're saying?
Infectious or
-3.
symptomatic, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, so then, hopefully by the time, because we're able to test, and it shows before you're infectious and symptomatic, that by the time we get the close contacts, hopefully it'll show up for them, but yet not be infectious.
Okay.
I think that's the thought process. Now, the hard part is too, we're testing once a week, so you might, test negative on a Monday, but contract it on a Tuesday and not test again until Monday, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's definitely not perfect, but hopefully the continued test to stay will help kind of mitigate the amount of quarantining the students will have.
Well, if they split and are here in the district multiple days, that probably would give us some extra flexibility.
Yes,
Well,
and
so
that's,
if
I
that's
think,
something we can shoot for when we schedule with them.
and I think that's their plan.
If we had a couple buildings testing, beginning of the week and a couple of buildings testing towards the end of the week,
Yes.
then that gives us some flexibility to get testing done out of schedule for some kids, as quarantine situations develop.
Thank you. The other question I had then was, I have 3, so it's the second one. You said only testing for the unvaccinated?
That's what they're recommending, is the testing be for the unvaccinated at this point.
So because vaccinated people are currently getting infected with COVID, and if they're at far lesser numbers, but if they're getting infected with COVID and there are these small number of breakthrough cases, and
Then
for
we
the
can
first
test
2
vaccinated
days,
people.
pardon?
Then we can test them if they get symptoms. If they become symptomatic, we can test them.
But not all of them are symptomatic who get infected with COVID. So I guess my question is there any wisdom if for instance, if our middle schoolers, for now, if our middle schoolers who are vaccinated come in contact with someone who, by the definition that we have there of 15 minutes, with someone who tests positive, is there some wisdom then to get them also testing to stay, understanding that their likelihood of getting COVID is much lower? However, my concern would be then if we're not testing them at all, you can't find breakthrough infections if you don't test for them.
Right. I think we can test if they have been contact traced, from
Okay.
being around somebody who's symptomatic.
Okay,
Unmasked around somebody symptomatic, right?
I think it's just math.
I think it's regardless of
Is it
mask.
regardless?
Yeah, it should be regardless.
Yeah, because the quality of masks differ and the ability of people to be able to wear them.
So like, once they've been exposed, I believe we're able to test them.
Okay, that was the bit.
But
that I
the
wanted.
routine
The
testing
routine one is
without,
for
is supposed to be for the
non-vaccinated, okay.
unvaccinated.
And we'll probably have to get more information on that, because originally the guidelines stated that if you were vaccinated in a close contact, you didn't need to quarantine anyway, but, definitely
That's
understand your
about
point,
Times have
that
changed,
it's,
yeah.
it's not necessarily,
No.
a stopgap to do that,
That's
so.
gonna change.
Yeah, a lot of things change over the summer.
Yeah, and then my last question, I guess, is do we have any leftover antigen tests that you had purchased? Because it might be useful as well, those are actually, they have a higher false negative rate than a PCR, so they're not as sensitive. But they're very good at detecting like when you're contagious.
Right.
And so there may be something
And
like at the
15
district
minute
level we can do.
results.
Right, in 15 minutes, so
Yeah, we have
maybe some
those and
supplemental.
we still have the option to be able to use those as well, supplement what we're doing. So even on those off days, we still would be able to use those to see the things
I
that
just
are
think
going
that's an
Our
excellent use.
current,
They have to be
doctor's
symptomatic,
order Yeah, and our current doctor's order has expired, but yet the new Shield testing, if approved, they provide a doctor's order for the PCR test, and we can ask, and they have confirmed that it will, if they can also add the antigen Bionex Now test on that as well. So that's,
I just have one question, just thinking about like the SEL piece of this. I know y'all will figure out a system that will make this as easy as possible for teachers, but I'm just thinking like for teachers in terms of having to explain, now there's this other thing you now have to do in school, like to the kids, and the kids having this process of like spitting in front of your friends. Like I'm thinking about a 5th grade girl who's not probably gonna wanna do that, right? What supports are staff gonna get around implementation of this to make sure that the kids feel comfortable and confident, and, you know, just another thing that's being thrown at them?
I was thinking of some kind of privacy curtain,
Okay.
sort of situation, even if it was mobile, if we went with that route of sort of delivering them outside the classroom, that we would provide some sort of privacy area for people who might be less comfortable spitting in public, which I imagine is most people.
Right, yeah. Okay, I just am like, well, and also just for the teachers to have to be like, okay, guys, it's time to go out into the hallway now, like, I wanna think about the support that teachers are gonna get, because that's like another thing they have to manage now.
Yeah. In the samples, they showed us videos of, a couple different formats for how they did. The teachers, they got to the point where the teachers don't even really come out and do it. The kids would come out, and, so the teachers won't necessarily, there'll be a staff member out there along with the staff from Shield. So there'll be somebody to recognize, potentially a health clerk or somebody else in the building, will be there to help facilitate that process. And it becomes sort of a matter of routine after a few days. Initially, I'm sure there'll be some trepidation on parts of kids and staff, but we'll have a little training video for kids and staff and explain everything to them and walk them through that process. I imagine the first couple times will be a little rockier until people get a routine. And what they were showing us is sort of once that routine is developed, it only takes a couple minutes per child, and multiple children are doing it at a time. And it's, the way they showed it to us, it was relatively non-invasive for what was going on in the school and the class.
I'm just thinking through the logistics of like explaining it and making it in a way that's accessible and feels good for everybody, and not just like, oh, you're back at school and now you have to do this extra thing.
Fortunately, we get 3 weeks or so of being in school before we would start, so that buys us some time to get people ready, parents, kids, and teachers. So. Any other questions?
Sullivan,
Yes.
Warshaw.
Yes.
Espinosa,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Bruckner,
Yes.
Sturman.
yes.
We shall move on to communication and information. There were 2 requests and/or responses for information under the Freedom of Information Act during the period June 11th, 2021 through August 13th, 2021. On June 19th, the district received a request from J. Doe requesting wage information for certain groups of classified staff. The response was sent on June 29th, 2021. On July 27th, 2021, the district received a request from Jeff and Natalia Oberich requesting policy information and 2nd grade curriculum materials. The response was sent on August 2nd, 2021. And if there is no further business to come before the board, I call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Warshaw.
Yes.
Espinosa,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Bruckner,
Yes.
Sturman,
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.